Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets open up the season at Barclays Center in gut-wrenching fashion, coming up just short against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But we're going to break it all down from the late game sequences, the big breakout performance from Cam Thomas, Ben Simmons, Mikal Bridges. It's all here coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And Doug, we're gonna cover this thing from the first tip to the final buzzer, but home opener, gosh darn it, you just want that to figure out in the end of this game and give the Nets a win against a team that now is a bit of a bugaboo for them.
Well, look, game 1 of 82, 83 if they get for a little further in the midseason tournament. And I'll say that from, we're going to get to the takeaways here, positive and negative. Obviously, a loss is a loss. You have to start with the negative on that one. But just from a high level, one, to have basketball back in our lives every night, to feel the nervous energy of watching the Nets try to close this game out. This thing had a playoff vibe to it almost. I mean, it was a tense game. I thought that there was a lot to just really, really like about what they did. Obviously, the result is not anywhere close to what you wanted. And sometimes sports, especially basketball, can feel really, really binary with, they lost, everything went wrong, or they won, everything went right. That's clearly not the case with this game. There's a lot of stuff in between. But in the end, I really was hoping that we get on here and say the road to 82-0 starts with 1-0, and to not have them be able to close out a game that they were winning late with maybe some key things that they probably could have done differently down the stretch. It's a really, really tough loss to start the season.
Good news is, though, Doug, the road to 81-1 starts by going 0-1.
So come on, buddy, always lifting me up. Yeah, always lifting us up there with the positivity, like a glass all the way full.
All the way full. Yeah, and there's so many things. Listen, the first quarter of this game is ugly defensively. We're thinking this team is going to hang their hat on that end of the court, and then you get 37 points dropped on you. Go, oh, that's not so good. But you battle yourself back there. You start to lock down. We see some of the depth of the personnel that Jacque Vaughn can go to and still be able to give yourself quality matchups. Some of the things that I think we'll talk about in terms of preseason sample sizes that carried over here, some of the combinations, and clearly Cam Thomas as well. The part for me that really stings is the late game sequence here. After it's all said and done, as you say, you're up, you get that clunky. There's really two sequences. You get the inbound, and it's the clunky handoff between Royce O'Neal and Mikal Bridges. Donovan Mitchell just goes ahead and runs like, straight through it like a running back, steals that thing, gets the flush. And then when it comes down to it after the triple, I'm not even worried about the push off on Cam Johnson. That's just NBA basketball. You get it, and it just doesn't feel like you have that sequence perfectly figured out. Cam Thomas picks up his dribble, needs to have a back and forth with Cameron Johnson. And then by the time it all goes down, Doug, Jacque Vaughn is begging for a timeout, and he cannot get it called. It's all moot because you got to have the best possible play drawn up. But it's really gut-wrenching to not get a look there. Like, not get a quality look down one. That's all you're probably asking for coming into this game, and you don't get that, and that's what really it sunk me a little bit. I have mid-season nerves through this game, and there it was at the end.
It does feel a little more of the same with the Nets, with not being able to execute some late game stuff. And you mentioned before, I mean, the heartbreaker to the Cavs last year on the Okoro corner three, which was probably the most brutal loss of the whole season, honestly. Like a game that they really just had, epically just won, and they just were somehow able to grasp defeat from the jaws of victory. But in this one, it goes a little bit differently, go a little bit back and forth. I think that people, and us probably too, are going to have some nitpick kind of stuff with how Vaughn decided to go with some of these sequences. I don't think we're going to get all the way into that right here, except to say that I did think there were some moves he made that were good, and there were some that were like head scratchers. Not having Simmons in for the defensive only possession on the Mitchell 3 makes like almost no sense. You mentioned he tried to get the timeout there at the end and wasn't able to get it. The play they had drawn off obviously went sour right away, and they could see that, and to not get a really good look. I think that there were takeaways that you have to be positive with Vaughn, a la Cam Thomas, who, I mean, we're not bearing the lead with Cam Thomas here. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about him second. We just wanted to make sure we just kind of covered the high level stuff from the game first. So I think before everyone starts to kind of just throw Vaughn under the proverbial bus here, I do think it's worth recognizing that there were some things that did go correctly here, and there were moves that he made that were clearly in-game coaching decisions, and then some things that just that didn't go away that way. And sometimes in a game of chess, a couple wrong moves is all it takes, even if you made a bunch of other right moves leading up to it. So again, I wanted so badly to come in here this win. I'm not sure I've wanted a win worse in a long time from that. Save maybe a playoff game here or there, or some late year stuff. Like this one had that kind of vibe to it, where and the reason it had the vibe, and I'm sorry I'm going a little long here, but the reason it had that vibe is actually it's a positive, because like you can see it with this team. Is like this team has something. Like there's clearly something here with this team. Like this is not just like some kind of random dumpster fire. We didn't think it was going to be, but this isn't some dumpster fire team where they're going to be scratching and clawing to just keep their head above water. Like you saw a ton of great stuff here, and you just want to be able to walk out with the W when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the sequences with Jacque Vaughn, but I said it there before, the depth of personnel. You do get Dorian Finney-Smith sessions here. You get Dennis Smith Jr. coming in, and you go, oh, right, this is why you brought this player in, to hit threes from the corner, first and foremost, obviously. But, a minute 36 to go in this game. The Nets are up 109-105, right? And that's why it feels so similar to the late season games last year with this same Cavs team as well. So that's a big part of it. And I think we'll get into the Cam Thomas one here. By the way, Brooklyn Nets come out with a win here. We start the show with Cam Thomas, but you have to put things in the proper order, in the proper context when you come up just a hair short here, 114-113. And I'll just note before we get into Cam that this is also a game, like when you go back and look at it, one of the things that I think we'll talk a lot about is the three-point shooting, the three-point attempts, the volume of attempts that got there. But there are categories that the Nets won, whether it was getting to the line in bulk 26 times to just 10. So they did that job. Cam Thomas was a big part of that. We'll get to him. And then even thinking about the blocks, the steals, the rebounds, like there's these categories that work for the Nets.
They won they won the rebounding battle 50-38. I mean, like the things that went wrong for them, the things that here's the thing. This is the one way to look at this. And then I want to get fully into Cam Thomas.
Yeah.
The way to look at this is, and this is the why I think even in a loss, we can look at this game and say, hey, there are lots of positives to take here, because some of the major worries that we had around this team, especially like what we've seen over the last couple of years that they could not do, they actually were able to do in this game, right? Like they got Cam Thomas a ton of minutes and he scored and he helped the team, almost helped the team win, right? Like, so there right away, boom, gotcha on that one. The rebounding battle, they've struggled forever to keep other teams off the boards and to get rebounds themselves. They had 50 rebounds. The Cavs had 38. They had 13 offensive rebounds. The Cavs had 9. Like these are the areas the Nets have gotten dusted in recent years. And they're like, okay, so this is what I mean about grabbing onto some of these things. 82 game season, this one would have been a nice W, but some of the things that we've at times worried about the team not being able to do, they look like they might be on the path to curing.
There's some other things on the back end of this episode that we'll touch back into from a stat category that I thought the Nets did really well, and including Mikal Bridges. We'll get into Cameron Johnson, but coming up here in a second, it was the man, the myth, the legend. One Cam Thomas said, listen, first half, you go ahead and climb on my back as I try to carry us through. We'll break down his performance and what it means for him going forward coming up next.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Ibotta. How does free Thanksgiving sound? This year, Ibotta is here to give you cash back. Help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete. You got about a month to go till that holiday. Who wants turkey without the gravy? The best part of Thanksgiving dinner is the sides. With Ibotta, you can make sure you get the whole family favorite side dishes and the turkey, all while getting yourself cash back. Okay, here's the deal. Starting November 1st for the 4th year in a row, Ibotta is giving 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. You heard that right. Just add the offers in the app to redeem everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast totally complete. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers, upload your receipt, and you're getting that cash back. Download the Ibotta app now. Use the code LOCKED. You're going to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, use the code LOCK. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. And when you are done with that, head over to our friends on Prize Picks. Prize Picks Daily Fantasy made easy. You can win up to 25 times your money this football season, basketball season. All you have to do on Prize Picks, you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on their projected stats, you place your entry. It's that simple. You're not wrangling with salaries like on some of these other sites. Totally secure, totally safe. They even have a reboot policy if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured, like for NFL games, CFB top 25 matchups. If you have a player that exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second half, that player is rebooted. I'd like to hear that. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. Like I said, all you're doing on PrizePicks, you're going more or less on those stats. Like, for instance, you had more on Cam Thomas. You hit that more. I think it was like 12 and a half. You hit in the first 30 seconds, I think, something like that, over on Prize Picks, and you were already set to go. Go over to Prize Picks right now. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. You use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy made easy.
As we just continue our discussion around the Brooklyn Nets 114-113 loss in their home opener at Barclays Center to the Cleveland Cavaliers, we turn our attention to one Cam Thomas. He does not start this game. We didn't think that he would. Although when we debated this, Doug, I said that he should be in the starting lineup, and maybe he will be in the starting lineup. Because when you come into a game like this, 25 minutes, 13 of 21, 2 of 5 from deep, 8 of 11 at the line, that's such a massive part of his game. We don't really worry about the rebounds or the assists or any of those other numbers. It just comes down to the fact that when this team needed scoring, when Mikal Bridges was having a hard time finding his rhythm early in this game, it came down to Cam Thomas outscoring the entirety of his own team at one stretch in this game, let alone dominating the Cleveland Cavaliers bench. So these bench minutes were getting absolutely destroyed, all because Cam Thomas is that guy when it comes to the offensive end of the court.
I mean, it was like a borderline legendary performance. It was everything you expect from him, and like much more. He set the rookie record. Set the record for most points in a season opener off the bench. That was per Nets PR during the game. He was the only reason that early on they were able to claw back into the game, because they came up. We talked about the late game sequences, but they got off to a very rough start in the first half. Excuse me, in the first quarter, it was looking pretty bad to start. They bring Thomas off the bench. He's instant energy, instant just scoring fuel, and they were able to sort of on that momentum climb themselves back into the game. I really can't actually overstate how great he was. It was just one of these things. Like, it's like, okay, we expect him to be microwave scorer, expect him to be fairly efficient, especially when he has a cooking. He's the kind of guy that you can kind of see right away if he has it or not. It was very clear early that he had it. He hits insane high degree of difficulty shots. I really can't say enough. I was definitely not the plan to play him 25 minutes. So, I mean, if you're Vaughn, how can you not play him that much, right? Yep. Like when he just seems like he's going to score. I wonder what this means going forward for what the overall plan was, because he's not likely to score 36 points in 25 minutes every single game. But if you were worried about sort of offensive juice off the bench, Thomas sort of laid that to rest like pretty quickly.
Yeah, and overreactions as far as they go. Listen, when I said that there's a case to be made for him to be inside of the starting rotation, it was as much about how do you create balance in the second unit as well. Now, he's explosive, he's dynamic, and you want to say he can pick on those matchups more easily. It's probably true, right? If you told me that Donovan Mitchell decided to switch on to Cam Thomas when he's in the starting rotation for a handful of possessions, things could look different. Donovan Mitchell, by the way, he showed the things that people thought he was going to be when he came into the NBA. This guy that could really lock you down on the defensive end. He was fully engaged late in this game, especially when it came to Mikal Bridges. So there's versions of this where it can look different if you thrust Cam Thomas into a starting rotation role. But I'm hard-pressed, man. I'm hard-pressed to say that, like, this game, in game number 1, doesn't open up not only the coaching staff's eyes, but, fan base has been pushing for this a lot. I think you have to reevaluate what his role is going to be very quickly in the short term. If it was supposed to be 15 to 20 and gradual buildup, you got to find a way to utilize him, not because there weren't other positives, but you can just see, the free throw numbers are so critical here. He attacks at the basket. We're going to talk about Ben Simmons. and how he did not attack at the basket. So somebody's got to do it. And whether it ends up being one of the shortest guys on the court instead of one of the tallest, so be it. He's an unlocker when it comes to those sort of things. And I'll even acknowledge too, man, well, I was being tongue in cheek on his stat line and saying, you don't worry about the rebounds and the assist numbers. There's nothing really that jumps out off the page to you in terms of 3-2, had a steal in this one as well, only had one turnover. That matters. But he played within the offense as well. Like, he moved the ball when the passes were there. He was not sitting on it ball dominant. When it got into late sequences in the shot clock, yes, he took over as he's supposed to. But I think he functioned well within the system that Jacque Vaughn and the coaching staff wants. That's why this is overwhelmingly positive, even beyond all the points that he put up.
Yeah, look, again, basketball can be really binary, right? It's like the ball go in good, ball go out bad. Yeah. And we sometimes tend to overreact one way or the other on this stuff, right? Like, if it's like, ball go in, we're also happy someone's the greatest player in the world. Ball go out in the game, then all of a sudden that guy needs to be benched or traded or worse, right? So yeah. Like, I don't want to go totally crazy on the Thomas thing. Like, my evaluation of him really hasn't changed that much. We thought he should get a lot of minutes, and he did here. I'm fine actually with most of the rotations that they ran in this game, save some of the late game stuff, which we talked about, which were there were some head scratching things. It was clear they were trying a bunch of different combinations. The bench, the good news is the bench is really deep. The bench is deep here. The bench is the only reason with Thomas and some of the other guys that they were even in the game. I'd be hesitant to make a full change, from starting lineup, right? Just based off this one game. So I would just say the encouraging thing is if you envisioned him as microwave scorer, 6-man, and that's where you just wanted to see him work to progress. Remember, this is a guy that was freaking benched for a month at the end of the year, where we all just what is going on here? The guy's benched for a month. He could never play. He scores 40 points and he disappears. It was just mind-boggling. We have at least progressed to the point of he's the 6-man. He's going to come in and do this thing. This is what probably the team needs. There will be some minutes where he has nights where tonight where he has hot hands and he gets to play and close. Right. And there will be some nights where that will probably not be the case because it's a little less efficient or whatever. I think those are in general very good signs. So I don't know if I'm agreeing with you or disagreeing with you, but I
think you're crystallizing my point of everything about this is telling you his role is cemented, as you said, and also can be growing. There is still more for his game to be here. The 25 minutes, as you mentioned, is probably more than they intended. That's okay. Because I think you can start to now say, okay, 20 minutes is kind of the baseline, and we think that we can play him more when we need to. Little footnote, if we just want to give a little bit of the post-game coverage as well as we try to do as we're over on live on YouTube, and we appreciate everybody being in here. This comes care of a friend of the show, Eric Slater, asking Jacque Vaughn about getting Cam Thomas back into the game at the 3-minute mark. Vaughn did say, if you watch that thing, he was tired, Cam Thomas, that after that stretch, we put him in it before. So then I went offense, defense with he and Nick. But by the way, he shook my hand coming out of the game after that stretch that we had given him. I thought the minutes overall were where they needed to be tonight. So I think that also just drills down on what we're discussing here, right? It's amazing. It's everything you want from Cam, and it is the first game. And I think the same way you would look at Cameron Johnson and say injury concerns, going to monitor his minutes. Ben Simmons, big long run here for him this season. You're going to keep an eye on all these guys. So I think there's a reality to why when you look across this, you get Bridges playing 35. None of the other starters played over 30 minutes in this game. A lot of Dorian Finney-Smith, right? A lot of Cam Thomas, a lot of Royce O'Neal. And then you also got a dose of Smith in there as well. So this is a balance of getting the season underway. Overwhelmingly positive for me on Cam Thomas. We'll see how he grows from here. And then we get to turn our attention to overall. What were our takeaways from this game? Do we think this team is ready to be high-level competitive with the likes of the Cleveland, of the NBA, and the rest? And how deep do we think that this rotation could go? Takeaways from the contributors there coming up in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, we'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you got to do on FanDuel is place a $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, really, there's no better time to do it. Like I said, that's a $5 real money bet. Don't even worry if it wins or loses because you're going to get the $200. Maybe you threw it in. Maybe you did it before the game on this one. Nets plus 2.5 going into this game. Nice try. Nets cover. They will take that one. We'll take a positive rather. Nets cover easily at the +2.5. Nice try, FanDuel. We got you on that one. They got the spreads. They got the player props. They have the over/under. So much more. They slice and dice this thing every which way. NFL, NBA. It's all there on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on. Keep going with the NFL season, with the NBA season as well. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL.
All right, of course, as we continue having our discussion around the Brooklyn Nets, 114-113 home opener loss at the hands of the Cleveland Cavaliers. We remind you, though, you could have got all the little tidbits and drilling down on kind of the key factors inside of this game by joining the Locked On Nets Insiders on joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNets. It's a free 14-day trial. It's all the game day analysis, all the little tidbits we're covering, some off-day stuff as well. Plus, you get to interact with Doug Norrie and yours truly. Head over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNets. Okay, by the way, everyone in the live chat room, something that I need to ask them in there. Every single time we do a live, we need a moniker. The Locked On Mavs podcast says the Raccoon Squad for their whole crew. I don't know what to call everybody, but I want something in there, so get after us in the chat on that one. When we go inside this game, Doug, the thing I wanted to hit here before we talk about individual role players, the team stats, the one other one that I really liked in this, fast break points. Nets had 24 fast break points and also had 26 points off of 10 Cavs turnovers. They lost the turnover battle 10-18 here, so you want to be cleaner with the ball. But that number right there to me is everything about the pace and the style of play that this team wants to work with. And to me, it's a repeatable thing. That's what this team is built to do. They're built to get turnovers. They're built to get out in transition. So that number should rise. And I actually think you could see them being really effective in that category as we start to talk individual performances.
The defense dialed it up at times in this group, man. Like yes. they had a couple different combinations that really, really got after it, right? Like they struggle with some drop coverage again. They struggle with Max Strus a little bit. Not even a little bit. They struggle with Max Strus a lot of bit. That was a lot of guys losing him coming under screens on like these Iverson cuts that he was running. And so
very similar from the preseason, right?
I have to watch back a little bit. It's a little bit different with him because, like in the preseason, they kept losing the ball handlers and drop. With him, it was like he was doing slash cutting near the top, and then like they were coming under that initial screen on these like X action kind of things, and they just kept losing him. Either way, I think overall the defense. I think you have to look at the defense and be like, hey, when they actually get a lot of this communication down, this group is really going to be able to clamp it up. Like they had multiple stops with multiple different guys. Taking down Mitchell. DSJ got him a couple times. Simmons was able to get him a couple times. In the end, obviously, Mitchell, hits the big shots to end up winning the game. But I think if you're looking at a high level of what the defense can become, this game gave you snippets of a group that can go a lot of different ways and really, really give opponents problems. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to really have to hold on to tight this season. I see more paths. I thought this anyway, but it's crystallized in this game. I saw more paths to the defense being great than the offense being adequate. if I want to compare those two things, and that is they're gonna need to hang their hat on the defense like all season long, because I think the offense, which we can get into stuff, and we'll probably go tomorrow and talk about more specific stuff around the offense. The defense at times, like they were able to mix and match a lot of different guys and have the defense look like sort of stifling at times.
Yeah, and that's the length, right? We talk about that. They're not the tallest team in the league, but they have reach, they have length, and they have switchability, and that really played to their advantage for several stretches in this game. If we're going to talk about, you said, well, offensively specifically and how it functioned, to your point, we'll have an off day to look into that a little bit deeper. Nets won't play again until Friday night on the road in Dallas, taking on Kyrie and the Mavericks. But Ben Simmons, right? Ben Simmons and Mikal Bridges. I want to make sure that we get to these two guys. Let's start with Mikal actually in this instance, because ends up finishing with 20 points, gets to the line 9 times, hits it efficiently, 6 of 12 from the field, 35 minutes of game action here. My biggest, not problem, but just, hey, I said this in the preseason. I'm not seeing you get heavily involved, right? You're supposed to be this top dog scorer for this team. There were big stretches where he was just one of the guys out there on the court. And I think in large part, it's because he's been identified as that guy by other teams. And they did a lot, the Cavs did, to take him out of the offense and force it into somebody else's hands.
There's sort of a compounding effect here with Simmons that's actually happening on offense. That's actually trickling down to guys like to guys like Bridges and otherwise. When they start these actions with Simmons, one, it's sometimes good. I mean, maybe we'll just talk about length about Simmons tomorrow, but because we're probably gonna run out of time. But they're not starting these actions right away with Mikal. So it's either becoming like a little too late to get it going, or it has to be very specific actions run for him to get him shots, because it's not really sometimes happening in the flow. Now, they did rely on him a ton of usage. We predicted a little bit, or I did, that the usage would definitely drop this season. I think there was just almost no way around it. It dropped pretty dramatically in this game. Some of that's Cam Thomas effect, but other is like what you said. It's just sort of not happening within the flow of what they're trying to do. He's too good of a 3-level scorer to have this few shots, and I
need him
do
a little
think
greedy,
that
right? Need him a little greedy, like my
that's a good way to
now
put
I
it.
go.
That's
Now
a good
I
way to
go.
put it. Yeah, like I'm the dog, I'm the alpha here, and like I'm the top scorer, and maybe that's going to be in his makeup, and maybe it's not. But I do think it starts with Simmons. Like they are running they are running sets that start much differently than they did last season. Again, like I've buried this twice, but like maybe we just wait on Simmons till tomorrow. But I think I think you saw some good stuff from Simmons, but I do wonder if the offensive initiation that's happening or not happening coming from him is having this trickle down effect for Bridges. And that's why we saw the shots drop to 12. I mean, to get to the line 9 times, so the usage wasn't horrible, but in general, you would think that number needs to be significantly higher going forward.
Yeah, Claxton, in spite of only playing 28 minutes, he was in and out a couple of times. He was getting beat up a little bit, took some hard falls, took some hits to the face. Only 3 of 10. A lot of that is going to be in and around the basket. But I think that the tease on discussing Ben Simmons is you get this one-to-one contrast. When Nicholas Claxton gets the ball in the paint, he's doing everything he can. He's breaking out the spin moves. He's trying to rotate. He's trying to be aggressive. He's trying to attack. And Ben Simmons wasn't doing that in this game. So I think we'll further break down tomorrow. So be sure to be here for that episode. What that is, right? How Ben Simmons' play directly impacts everybody else that's out there on the court. Now, we'll also talk about his rebounding and his assist numbers, and that was all there for them. The other thing when you mentioned there we can close out on, I think, is just the bench rotation. Nothing surprising here beyond bigger minutes and a massive night for Cam Thomas. I didn't think we were going to see any Lonnie Walker, knowing that Smith Jr. was back in the mix, knowing that Finney-Smith has been the one-to-one with Cameron Johnson coming back from the injury. Royce O'Neal, I'll be interested to see what happens here going forward, because I think Royce O'Neal gets a little bit caught in no man's land, although he had 7 rebounds in this game. I just functionally don't know if he has the most value going into that second unit. And unfortunately, man, I thought that this ending stat line for Day'Ron Sharpe was going to be a little bit brighter. It was 12 minutes, just about on average from last year. Had a couple rebounds. I thought he played well. But overall, what was your bench unit takeaway? Understanding Cam Thomas is number 1, 2, and 3 of the positives.
My bench, again, like kind of goes back to what I said before. My bench unit takeaway is thank God they had the bench. It's the only reason they were in the game. Like it was. So I do think this, and Jacques Vaughn had some interesting quotes here about some of the minutes, and we'll get into that tomorrow too. We'll break down some of Jacques Vaughn's post game stuff because I think he had there are some interesting takeaways for that's going on right now as we're recording. There were some interesting takeaways for what he sort of said is going to be the minutes delineation going forward. And look, I know Jacques Vaughn's sort of getting it here. I get it. There was some weird stuff that happened, but I think overall,
honestly, though, I don't get it. I'm going to close out on this. I don't entirely get it. Not because you don't want to see certain things differently, or because the defensive, offensive, and all that stuff. When you want Cam back in, it's all great. Like, I don't know. It's game 1. It's game 1 of 82, and you're integrating a couple of new pieces. You have a deep bench. You're changing roles slightly for guys that were playing bigger minutes last year or that were in the starting rotation last year. I think there have to just come on. Game 1 of 82, the Cavs are a really good team, and the Nets took them down to the wire. That's why I walk out of this game saying, listen, were they in a position to win? Yes. Should they have won? Probably. But the fact that they came out and went toe-to-toe after a very sluggish start on both ends of the floor, I have nothing but positives about where I think this team can go as they get their feet underneath them this season.
Yeah, and look, you want to give him a positive. Like he stuck a lot with the unit that was really working, right? Like again, these bench guys got a lot of minutes. Like Cam got a lot of minutes. DFS, I mean, he started to keep Cam Johnson's minutes sort of in check. He played 28, and they went with a pretty tight rotation. To all things being said, of 10 guys. I'm with you. I don't think he deserves a trash. I think there's going to be a couple of things. I think there are for sure a couple of things that we can point to specifically and say, hey, that's a bit of a head scratcher. And it really sucks when those are high leverage things too that you can point to that might have been a difference between a W or an L, right? Like so, and those end up being tough. So I think like on a micro level, for sure, you can look at this and be like, oh man, there's like 3 things that happened here that might have been some might outweigh other what maybe generally positive things. And I think that's just the nature of the beast, right? Like, it's just sometimes you're just going to look at in the end and say, hey, look, sometimes it does come down to those last two moves. And if you don't do them right, then that's why you get paid the big bucks. And that's why you're the coach. Like, you got to take the bullets too. But yeah, overall, I like, again, just to maybe wrap it up for me, I was mostly pretty encouraged here. And I think if you're looking, I mean, I'll put it this way. Think back to 1 year ago, the first game of the year. Do you remember what happened? They got destroyed by the Pelicans. Like, destroyed.
Right.
They lost by like 25.
That's right.
They lost by 25.
Like, okay.
Yeah. They lost by 25 to the Pelicans. It looked horrible. Like, it looked every phase of the game looked so bad. And we're like, what is going on here? It's coming on. That's just not the vibe here. It sucks to lose. I wish they were 1-0. But even that is a different vibe. So I know I'm going to walk away with that feeling, I think.
All good things. We'll be back in again, breaking down all of more sequences with Ben Simmons, the offensive side, talking about the bench, talking about rotations, getting a deeper look at this one, and quotes from the post game. That'll be coming up tomorrow. And then live, dude, we love it. We're going to stick around here and chop it up with you guys in a loaded chat room. So greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for everyone that jumped into the YouTube live here. If you're on the podcast feed, as a reminder, you got to jump over to YouTube live and make sure jump over and make sure you subscribe to YouTube so you know when we're going live. Conversely, we put up a bonus episode that only went up in the game feed today, breaking down what we thought was going to happen in the game. So you got to be subscribed to both. It doesn't cost you anything. No. If you want to just you want to get a little subscription going, go to joinsubtext.com/lockedonnets. We're texting every day. All of our thoughts, all the insider stuff, just putting it in. We've had multiple conversations with folks over in Subtext. I love the platform. So join subtext.com/lockedonnets free trial. Just go test it out. If you think you're going to hang around for the long term, join subtext.com/lockedonnets.
Study nature, love nature, stay close to nature. It will never fail you. Why? That's Frankie Lloyd Wright.
Oh, one of the all-time great architects. There we go. I was going to say builders, but that would have been wrong. He's an architect. We'll be back tomorrow and in a second on YouTube. More Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Almost won the game. Basketball. Yeah. All right, my feathered friends. Thanks for being in on it, man. Big crowd for the first game of the season. I know there's going to be things that are going to be hitting on Jock Vaughn a little bit. Something that I didn't want to do fully in that episode there, but I think we can talk more about, Doug, is the late game sequence for me. Awareness from everybody on the court, but Cam Thomas has the ball in his hands, right? There's a timeout to use there. You can feel free to take that. You don't get to take those home or carry them over to the next game. So that's one of the things, not just for Cam, for the team overall. Situational awareness would be nice to see. As we always say, man, if you have something you want, a question, put @LockedOnNets in front of it. We'll try to scan through this, but it got deep quick, Doug. It got deep quick here in the chat in terms of.
Look, I get it, man. I get it. Like, you tune into sports to see your team win. Like, that's it. And coming off of like multiple seasons, and it's been a long wait here for basketball. And again, like, you don't tune in to be like, you don't root for the adjustments and then hope for a close one. Like, you hope for a close game. And if you want to go really negative here, it's like, hey, you wasted like sort of an epic performance from Cam Thomas, right? Like, you get 35 points from him. He goes absolutely nuke, and you don't get the W. And so I get it. I get why there's frustration. My heart was beating so fast for this game. Adam and I jumped on before the podcast. I was like downtrodden. And then I got so annoyed with my light that it actually made me forget about the game.
Then I passed out. Then I passed out from laughing too hard. It was a mess, but we got here in the end. No, and I think too, by the way, because when you brought that Pelicans game from last year, it's a good reminder. And the other good reminder here too is, and I know we're trying to lift you guys up here. If I told you that the Brooklyn Nets had their opening night game, Cam Johnson had 12 points, Bridges had 20, Claxton had 7, Simmons had 4, Dinwiddie had a 1-for-3 night with 5 points, right? So you had 1 20-point scorer in your starting rotation. Like, we know the Cam Thomas piece. If I told you that was the line and the Nets lost by a point, you would have thought the Nets lost by 30 in this game. So I think a part of this is too, when this game started, I did to a man, be honest in the chat. What were your expectations around the Nets competing in this game? I told you to take them on the money line because I really thought they could win this game straight up. So when it comes down to the wire like that, I look inside this box score and look at what we watched and say, oh, there's a lot of little things that they can work on, clean up, get better with. You play that same kind of game 10 times against the Cavs, you're going to win a handful of those. Like, they are ready to compete with those teams. So remind yourself how you felt before the ball got tipped, not how you felt when it was 114, 113, and Cam Thomas had 36 points, but took a while to get back in the game.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because once you can taste it and once you can smell it, like it's hard to like sort of forget what that is, right? And you are staring at this thing and you're thinking, they got this, they're gonna win, they're up 3, with like under a minute to go or whatever it was, and all you got to do is get a stop, and then obviously Spider hits like an absolute dagger, and and then they have a terrible last look, and that's all you end up remembering. And then you look at the standing and it's 0-1. So I get why people are mad, and I know what you're saying, because it's like, hey, like I was joking about with the FanDuel thing, they were 2.5 point dogs, they covered it, so they exceeded expectations by 1.5 points. If you're looking about how the money got into this thing, but in the end, the Nets
Did you believe Spencer Dinwiddie dumpstered my 3-pointers? What happened to Spencer Dinwiddie? What the heck?
I will say this: what does suck is that the Nets are not the kind of team that can afford to lose these games. Like, they don't have it in them where they're going to blow teams out. Like, this isn't the Sun, right? Where it's like, hey, once everyone's healthy, we're going to steamroll some of these teams and we'll just see how it goes. Like, the Nets aren't built like that. So when they do have it this close and you can smell the victory, like this team does kind of need the wins a little bit more than others when it's the close variety, because they have no coast in them. Like, they can't be coasting at all this season.
Whoops, we just won 10 out of 12, right? Like, that's not probably in their projections here.
And their first 10 games are hard enough. Like, they have a pretty tough stretch here to start the season. So the chance to have maybe taken one to start the year is particularly painful.
Yeah, and remember, because we said Dallas on Friday night, so they get the day off in between here. But when we went and talked about it, and everyone said, first 10 games, what are your hopes here? A lot of 3-7 kind of projections. I had said the way you get to 4-6, which I think is good over these first 10 games with Boston, with Milwaukee, those teams in there. It was a game like this against Cleveland, steal one at home. It's the Chicago game on November 3rd, right? Like, those are the kind of games you got to grab here along the way, and then win some other ones that you feel like you should. So yeah, I mean, listen. It's going to be hard. What are we going to say when it's the same thing 20 plus games down the line? Well, Joey, you got to wait another 19 games before we have that discussion. I don't think it's discussion then, right? Yeah,
I think if they play like that, here's the thing: if they play like this for 20 games, it's not going to be the same thing. Like like there was enough here. There's enough here to be like, hey, we've got something here, and we're going to probably end up winning some of these close games, right? So I think that like that's more encouraging. I think. I know it's hard, but like there's a different version of this where it's you're really downtrodden, right? Like, they didn't make any shots and everyone looked terrible and they lost by 20, and like that was probably in the range of outcomes for this team, because we aren't really sure exactly how they were going to roll. Yeah, I'm still pretty encouraged they kept it close. It's just that it is painful to have it lose, and I understand why folks are sort of having the reaction that they're having.
My holy King, who we appreciate, he's a frequent flyer in here. Jacques Vaughn doesn't know how to use Ben. I'll couple that with this other comment in here, which I think is worth noting. So 10 rebounds and 9 assists is worthless. So, some of you don't know how to what you're talking about. I don't want to be overly aggressive around it, but I think, again, we're going to talk more about Ben tomorrow. There's some things fundamentally that if Ben Simmons isn't going to do them, then there is no using him a better or different way. I thought he set the table really well. He pushed the pace incredibly well. Like, there's the rebounding was there. Defensively, he locked in for several possessions and it impacted that end of the floor. So there's things that maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm being too soft across the board here, Doug. You'll tell me.
He doesn't want to shoot. He doesn't want to shoot. My point
is gonna be like, on the first game, I'm not going to go fully to that. I'm not going to go full in on this thing yet for Ben. I'm going to point it out, and it has to change. But
this is what I'm going to say tomorrow, and I'll just say a part of it here. He doesn't want to shoot. It's painfully obvious. Yeah. It looks brutal when he tries, and every time it looks worse, he doesn't want to do it the next time. And it's like so obvious.
That's the mental game, right?
Totally. And it's a mental game combined with he doesn't have any touch either. So think of this is like a bad comparison because this guy's like the legit best in the whole game. But like Jokic, when he gets near the rim, he has a very soft shot that looks like it could just go in sort of no matter what. It just like lands softly on the rim and it looks effortless. And this is one of the reasons he scores so much. No one else is Jokic. But conversely, when Simmons goes up for shots around the rim, and it's not a layup, it looks so bad. It looks like a shot put ball that just has no chance to go in. He airballed one of them. He short armed another.
Like
he passed up it under the basket like easy up and go with a defender there to kick it all the way out to Thomas for a 3.
Yep.
He just doesn't want to shoot. And we heard a ton in the offseason about how, it was a comeback trail and it's one game and whatever. It's not too dissimilar to what we saw in the preseason. He took 6 shots in 23 minutes. 3 of them looked horrible. And if that is going to be what the thing is, it's going to be a struggle at times. And I don't know how you coach around that. Like if the Nets starters took 9 3-pointers in this game. 9.
Yeah.
That's 2 of the guys can't shoot them at all in Simmons and Claxton. And so
by the way,
I know I'm burying tomorrow's episode. So I guess I don't really want to do this too much, but I don't know. It's so obvious to me.
Yeah. No. And I didn't mean, I don't mean it in the, I don't mean it in the lack of obvious around what the problem is, but, and I guess, I want to give some like runway of like, and if 5 games in, he's still not taking the shots, then it's even, then we're really building to it. I don't know what the cutoff is. It's probably only 10 games. Maybe it's only 5 games. Maybe it's only 2 games, right? If you don't,
I'm officially worried now. I'm officially worried now because
okay.
we said this after coming out of the preseason where the usage was just 0 basically. Yeah. And we're like, hey, this has to change. It didn't. And by the way, this isn't like a Cavs team that has like some crazy, amazing interior presence either.
Jared Allen with no Jared Allen there, that would made it more glaring, right, for Ben Simmons.
Of course. I'm doing the whole freaking episode for tomorrow, but like that's a major problem.
I'll dovetail off of this Ben Simmons thing into a talking point that we will never bring up, like on a full podcast traditional episode. It's not a narrative that matters right now. But we had the discussion about closing out the season, just brought up, hey, like Nicholas Claxton is going to be a guy to watch because depending on what happens, and he has a contract coming up and the Nets want to commit that money. Do you think that there is this version of the first 30, the 40 game sample size? Ben said, let us get these 30, 40 games. Like, is there a world where like I know it's always so good, right? Dude, just give me 40. Give me half the season.
Talk to me in April.
And by the way, when you come back to me, I'll say, I'm not so sure. Give me 20 more. No, but I really, maybe at the highest of levels, the big pullback for me was like, are we 100% sure that if you're looking at what Nicholas Claxton is and you're looking at what Ben Simmons is and other teams are looking at what value is and helping them and blah, 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 blah. They're both non-shooters. They both have versatility defensively. They both have these roles. Like, is it 100% that it has to be that Nick Claxton would be the guy that gets that would be the talking point going to the deadline, understanding it's an expiring deal? Because I don't know. Like, if you're going to get rid of one of them, and if Ben Simmons shows you that he isn't going to shoot, well, then wouldn't he be the guy? Because at least Nick Claxton is like continuing to develop and evolve the offensive end of his game. There's a world where you go, you want this defensive stalwart that can facilitate the crap out of your team? Come get him. He's on the books for the following season. We don't even want a ton for him. But that's probably going to be a season narrative that we end up looking at if Ben Simmons remains this type of player.
It's just going to be hard, man, with Claxton. Like, he just doesn't have a guy on the team who can really help utilize him in the best way, like a pick and roll lob finisher kind of guy, point guard that, even like Dinwiddie and him, like kind of had, like, there was something that was, even I know people went crazy because the Dinwiddie lobs looked horrible at times, but like even just that kind of guy who can rim run, who can help you rim run and sort of, press the defense into making a decision near the basket, whether it's going to be like you're going to hit a floater or you're going to lob it up, like, what Trae Young's able to do, guys like that, that really just kind of tax the defense. Harden was like this too, like the guys. And so I'm naming the elite guys, but the Nets don't really have anybody like this. And Simmons is like not that guy at all. So it's going to be very hard to showcase the best parts of Claxton's game within this current offense. They just don't really have a good pick and roll ball handler outside of like sort of Dinwiddie. That can do it. And now they're not running the offense like that because Dinwiddie's like resigned to the corner at times because Simmons is running the offense. So like, I just don't know how they're going to actually extract in this current version, how they're going to extract the best versions of Claxton, because the best version of him is a guy, hey, just stay level to the screen. Okay, let's go. And like, let's kind of get to the basket and get some momentum here because he can up and over finish, but they just don't have that guy. And the one guy they do, they're not running the offense like that because of Simmons.
Plus, you got how about that up the seam pass from Claxton to Cameron Johnson, a little over the shoulder, brought that thing right into the breadbasket. That was Nick Claxton on the outlet from the paint, from line to line, and then Johnson finished it off there. Yeah, this is how I want to be patient. I want to wait and see. I want to get sample sizes, and then I want to go violently in the other direction and talk about whether or not who should be talked about getting traded. And I'm going to scan through here quickly, maybe before we talk about wrapping it up here. I know I wanted, I didn't look at, because we didn't highlight this in this game, and we'll go back and you said we'll talk more about Ben specifically tomorrow and the team more specifically tomorrow. What was Mitchell's final line in this game?
He's finished with 27, I think.
27. Okay, so 31 was his high against the Nets. 36 minutes. I mean, 11, 21. I mean, listen, he hit those couple of dagger threes when it mattered most. I mean, and you know what? I mean, that's like another highlight here too, right? Like Donovan Mitchell. We talk about levels of players, right? That's the difference. You have a Donovan Mitchell. He gets the ball in his hands, gets a little space for himself, hits those couple of clutch buckets. Like that's what the Nets lacked in this game specifically. It's like, who's your elite closer, right? The Nets don't have that. The Cavs did. And that's going to be the difference maker in a lot of these games too, especially down the stretch when we see the Nets struggle to kind of find their offensive rhythm in these close games.
Yeah, I like it's just one of those things where that's just I'm kind of standing there right with you. Like with Mitchell, he's gonna dagger you at times, right? Like I think that the Nets, I think to some degree the Nets have the personnel to kind of like match up with some of these guys. In general, I don't know, man. It's so funny. Like overall, I almost feel like the Nets won. Like I'm starting to get I'm starting to really transition myself to be like, it was like all pretty good. Because it's like hard to pinpoint exactly like all the crazy outside of a few plays, I'm kind of rambling here, but like outside of a few plays, I think in general, I took away mostly what was positive here. So I don't know.
Take more. By the way, we didn't talk about this in the show. Cavs 43 3-pointers. Nets 27 attempts from beyond the arc, right? And you talked about they got to be a team that takes over 30 with ease, right? So take more 3-pointers, cut down on the 18 turnovers. Honestly, I mean, those two things alone might be enough in a game when you were down. You were down at one point. What was it? 22-7, 22-9 early in this game. Like when that first quarter was unfolding at one point, and we know Cam Thomas was a big catalyst of coming back there, but you would have said, well, this isn't a team that has the ability to close the gap on this. And it doesn't look like the defense. Okay, defense tightens up. Cam Thomas gives you the burst, and all of a sudden you're back in this game. That lead that they took late, the Cavs, that was the first one they had since the mid-90s. So like, the Nets did it. They like, to your point, I mean, they did it in so many categories. So I tweak a little thing, make a couple little corrections here, and I think you're going to be in good shape. And the other thing I'll say too, when we talk about the rotations, those are going to flesh out as well as you roll through this. Like Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, just because we talked about them a little bit. I liked Dorian Finney-Smith's game tonight. Like I think that he fits very well inside of what the new version of this team is. Royce O'Neal might feel a little bit redundant, especially if you think like Dennis Smith Jr. is going to come in for these defensive sequences. Do you have that sense around that too? I mean, one game sample size, but is that what we're going to watch for? Does Royce O'Neal have a real carve out role deserving of 20 plus minutes a night?
I think we'll see this probably mix and match a little bit, like with who gets these minutes. And by the way, some of this is all going to go away. Like about 7 of these minutes are going to go away once Cameron Johnson's ramped up to his full minutes, right? So it's going to, because he was 26 and you figure he's probably around 33, 34. So I would say 7 or 8 minutes are just going to disappear off this. You would think that Simmons is going to play more than 23 minutes a game too. Like, I don't know, 23 for him, 24 for Dinwiddie. I think we probably have to just have gentle guidance down around the bench minutes, just because I think we have to expect that there's got to be minimum of 15 more minutes coming out of the starting lineup on an average night between Simmons, Dinwiddie, and Cameron Johnson. So like, I think that that's probably what ends up being like the whole story with those minutes. But again, like, it is very concerning. Like the 23 minutes from Simmons is concerning. The Dinwiddie 24 minutes, it's like, I guess it's all Cam Thomas here, but I don't know. I said that one's as someone who does minutes projections for every single team in the NBA, I was way off on the Nets tonight. Like
I was going to put him out. Like I was going to do like the, new minutes now coming into the season with the last little looks we got in preseason. And the only guy, like I get no credit for not posting it. So, but like Dinwiddie, I was like, well, maybe Dinwiddie's like closer to 30 because they have some shooter guys that they want to bring in, or it's going to be more Cam Thomas here. But I had everybody over 30 minutes. Obviously, you knew Cameron Johnson wasn't going to play as much tonight. But I had all the usual suspects playing 32 to 34 minutes in the starting rotation. And I think I struggled. I put like Royce O'Neal like 15 minutes. So maybe you're right. It's just the Johnson eating up a few more of those. I think that he's the one that gets reduced. And I think that honestly, Dennis Smith Jr., Is he going to go 2 of 3 from deep every single game? No, but those minutes were quality. Those 16 minutes matter, and I can see him staying at that 15+ minute mark and probably getting utilized a little bit more going forward, because I liked the way he also came in and handled himself very well on both ends of the floor.
All right, let's get out of here. I'm getting bummed out. I'm getting,
I've never concluded just an open-ended kind of statement and that been met with more dejection and just low. All right, let's get out of here. Listen, we really appreciate it, guys. Everybody in there. The conversation is so deep and so wide-ranging that it's hard to keep up with it. But we're going to be doing this Friday night. Another great opportunity to come in for a post-game live. The rematch with Kyrie Irving and the Dallas Mavericks and Luka. Let's see. What are the adjustments that this team makes between now and then? Expectations are going to be high. And as Doug mentioned during the episode, there'll be another post on just the pod feed game preview. What are the key matchups? Adam is now, that's me, 0 for 1 on his parlays. I missed on tonight's parlay. It was a disaster kind of across the board. So come in for the next one, though. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be back in next time.
Spurs beating the Mavs as we're recording this right now. So we're going to go tune into that and watch.
Oh, they're suckers. There you go. Yeah, those guys. So the bums this Mavs team. By the way, who said Mavs to miss the playoffs? It starts tonight. We'll be back in next time, guys, talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball.